From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. This is episode 569. I am Andrew in the forum, Andrew NLSC on X. I'm joined as always by my co-host Derek, DP3 in the forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, I like to think we're an all-star duo. That probably hints at this week's topic, though the title probably already gave it away. So please, tip us off.
Yeah, so on today's show, we are going to attempt to fix NBA All-Star festivities, and the community chimed in as well. This was a community question. So after we go over how we would fix NBA All-Star festivities, we will get the community's take as well. And there was a lot of great responses to that question. So as you know, Andrew, the 2025 NBA All-Star Game averaged 4.7 million viewers, which is the second least watched game on record. Viewership was down 13% from the previous year, and I found that statistic on the Basketball Network's IG. So it wasn't just the All-Star Game that people were balking at. There was a lot of negative feedback about the slam dunk contest. And a lot of people were underwhelmed with that contest outside of Mac McClung's performance. People were asking for more. How do we get the stars to participate? How do we bring true creativity back to the dunk contest, etc.? So we're going to go over it all. I mapped out a plan and what I would do starting in 2026 for NBA All-Star festivities. So, Andrew, we're going to play Adam Silver here.
Oh, we're going to create a tournament.
That we can do a better job. No, not going to create another tournament. But I think you'll like my ideas, and I'm sure that I will like yours. So we split this up into 3 days. So we'll have Friday night festivities, Saturday night, and then we will have the Sunday evening. And what I want to make Friday night about are the legends. Friday night will be Legends Night. The first event would be a game of horse. 8 contestants, $100K to the winner. Doesn't matter how old you are, Andrew, you can play a game of horse, right? They're not going to be going up and dunking. It's shooting horse, layup horse, trick shot horse, etc. Traditional horse. And how cool would it be to see some of our favorite legends out there competing in a game of horse? I think a lot of those clips would go viral on social media, etc. Some funny things that would happen for past players, whether it be fails or epic shots and whatnot. I think that would be a lot of fun. The second event would be a 3-point contest, but that one that follows the traditional format. 5 racks, 1 money ball in each rack worth 2 points, and all other balls are worth 1. The contest should feature past contestants who are no longer in the league. $250K to the winner. Why these high dollar amounts to the winners? Because there needs to be incentive for them to play.
Exactly.
Right? They're past players. They're no longer in the league anymore. Some of these players probably could use $100K or $250K and whatnot.
I wouldn't turn it down.
It would have past players training for the events. And I know you were, of course, you and I would certainly not turn down $250K, right? So right now we have the first 2 events. We have a game of horse, past legends, 3-point contest utilizing past 3-point contest participants. How cool would it be to see Mark Price out there again? I saw footage of him, a couple years ago, it was his son that posted the footage, I believe, and he still has it, right? He can still shoot the rock. He can still dribble the rock as well. And then finally, there would be the Legends game, the return of the Legends game. Players who are no longer active in the NBA from the past, 4 8-minute quarters, which is like high school, and the winning team splits $500K. I think that the Legends games that took place in the 80s and whatnot, I've shared some of that footage on Twitter. They were super entertaining. Right? Seeing guys like Pete Maravich out there who had been retired for a few years, cooking some of the other old school guys and whatnot. I think Wes Unseld was out there as well, and he had been retired for almost a decade or something like that, when that game took place. And I think whether you make it, full court or you make it half court, I think full court might even be preferred by past players. I think that bringing back the Legends game, I think that it would be a hit. So that would be my Friday night. Any objections?
Not at all. And what I love about that is that it has that celebration of the past, that celebration of tradition that the All-Star Weekend always had. You'd see the Legends on the sideline. You had the Legends involved in various events over the years, like the Shooting Stars, for example, like the Legends game. And I know that some Legends got hurt, obviously. Not everybody was in the best shape, and there were some ugly moments in those games. I've watched them too, but at the same time, like you said, it was so cool to see them still strutting their stuff, and some of them still had it, especially if they had only been retired a few years. Some of the ones that have been out of the game for a while, well, perhaps they needed to hit the gym a little bit more, shake off the rust, get their conditioning back. But if we're talking about great players, there are a lot of players from the past decade or so that are retired. Your Dirk Nowitzkis, Dwayne Wades, etc. You see them on social media, still in great shape. How fun would it be to see them play again?
Exactly. I think it would be. I think Dirk wouldn't be able to participate in any of these events just because his feet are so bad now. I watched him in a celebrity pickleball tournament recently. Other guys there were like Terrell Owens and whatnot, and Dirk was really having trouble moving.
I didn't see that.
So,
yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, he said he regretted playing the last couple of years that he did in the NBA because, his feet hurt all the time, and he says that he struggles to play with his kids and all of that. So. Yeah, definitely not. But there's plenty of other players, past players, that'd be willing to participate in these competitions, especially with the dollar amounts that I just listed. So Saturday night, we'll start off with the rookie-sophomore game because I don't want that to go anywhere. And it would follow similar rules to the All-Star game, which I'll get into when we start talking about Sunday. So Saturday night festivities. 3-point contest followed by the dunk contest. For the 3-point contest, I don't really think there's much that needs to be done with that, to be completely honest. I love the traditional rules. I wish there was still, only one money ball in each rack and
Agreed.
Each other ball is worth one. I would probably go back to that if I, was commissioner of the NBA. But the dunk contest, let's talk about that. So for the dunk contest, no props allowed. You can have somebody throw you a lob, whether it be off the glass, bounce it to you, etc., but it has to be a teammate. And the dunkers are voted in by the fans. If you are voted in, you must participate. The winner receives $500K with an additional $250K for the charity of their choice. If the fans vote in, listen, here's the bottom line. Without the fans, there is no NBA. Right?
Exactly.
Whether it's fans that flood the stadium or people that are watching on TV or interacting on social media, the NBA is about the fans, and the All-Star festivities should certainly be about the fans. It's a fans weekend, right? So whether it be like LeBron James and Anthony Edwards and whatnot, they have to participate if they are voted in. And there would be a code of conduct violation if there's any hint of low effort. And this is also going to go for the All-Star game, and I'll go into that in a moment. So we finished up Friday and Saturday. Any objections?
Not at all. And I'm a big fan of getting rid of the props. As I said in last week's show, I think it's gone on way too long. I think it's gotten too silly. I felt that way even in the late 2000s when Dwight Howard was getting in the phone booth. There was more theatrics before the dunk than the actual dunk itself, the creativity with the dunk. He still had some nice dunks, obviously, but there's no creativity. It's just jumping over things. It's boosting, as we said last week, so I'm all about getting rid of the props. Like I said, I think you can have a player throw you the ball. I'm okay with allowing some violations if a player doesn't dribble, if they double dribble, if they carry, if they throw it off the back of the backboard and catch it and do a 360 windmill. That's pretty impressive, even though it wouldn't be legal. Maybe you could set up a situation, throwing the ball off a defender with their back to you, catching it and dunking it. That would be very difficult, but that would be replicating a game situation. That's the kind of creativity that I like to see. I want to see those variations, those tricks with the ball. The props just allow players to not do any of that stuff, to just keep jumping over obstacles and boosting off them and not being truly creative, not trying to replicate and improve upon the dunks we've seen in the past. As I said before, I think there is value in replicating standard routines, standard dunks, doing them better or doing them as well as the originators. Maybe you lose some points if you do copy a dunk. If you do travel or double dribble, maybe that knocks a point off your score. Remember, that was the big thing about MJ taking off from the free throw line, Derek, is that he actually dribbled, where a lot of players who have done the free throw line dunks don't. So these are the little things that add that extra point. He actually dribbled. Oh, he didn't double dribble. He didn't travel. Things like that. Yeah, I just want to get rid of the props. I want to see more star power back in the contest, so any incentive to get the big names to compete and actually try is, absolutely fine by me.
If you talk about scoring, the panel of judges would have to be made up of former dunk contest participants. That's the other piece of this. No social media influencers, no other celebrities, all of that. It would have to be former dunk contest participants.
Except Kenny Smith.
I think Kenny Smith has almost worn out his welcome.
Yeah, Iggy was
a little
robbed.
bit.
I'll just throw that out there again.
Yeah, a lot of complaints this year about Kenny Smith, and I think he's still living off of "let's go home, ladies and gentlemen, let's go home" and whatnot. He rarely ever changes his tune. He often just comes off as kind of an NBA shill, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who's shilling.
I thought you were going to say he was still living off being runner-up to Dominic Wilkins in 1990 as well.
Kenny Smith was a hell of a dunker himself.
He was. And a three-point shooter. He could do both.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think Kenny Smith has kind of gotten stale.
Bit corny.
So then we get to Sunday. And first off, for all of these festivities, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, no colored courts, Andrew. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of the in-season tournament type courts. The completely blue court. No, I want to see hardwood. I want players playing on the hardwood. I think that the blue courts cheapens it. The colored courts cheapens the festivities. I swear Adam Silver is trying to turn the NBA into like a Disney movie, like a cheap Disney movie, and it is getting super old. I want to see these guys running up and down the court, running up and down on a real court. I want to see them running up and down on the hardwood and, playing basketball. So all of that crap, the theatrics, all of that stuff, gone.
The fact that the All-Star courts, and for that matter the NBA Cup courts as well, remind me so much of some terrible designs that I saw in 2K Pro-Am that users had just thrown together and just tried to make the most obnoxious court they could. How did that become the template for the NBA? Did they hire those people to design these courts? Yeah, I hate to see it.
So let's get to the Sunday night All-Star game. The game is going to be returned to its traditional format, East versus West, no colored court, 12-minute quarters. Also, a player's NBA contract would include language related to their obligation to give effort and entertain the fans in regular games and, if selected, for All-Star festivities. In tennis, players have been suspended and fined in the past for a lack of effort. Code violation. It's in their contract. If they show low effort during a match, if they're losing a match and they're pouting and they start showing low effort and everything, they can get suspended. They have gotten suspended. They can get fined, etc. That is exactly how this would work. No money is made by the players for winning the All-Star game or participating in the All-Star game, but each player will get $100K to donate to the charity of their choice. So let's say there's 12 All-Stars on the East and they win the game. That's $1.2 million that's handed to that team, each player $100K, and they can donate it to the charity of their choice. Again, people need to understand something. They're talking about how the players, they make so much money and they shouldn't have to try in the All-Star game. And they're worried about their brand and everything. All of that money that they make, Andrew, would not exist if it wasn't for the fans.
Exactly.
Right? The fans are the reason why these contracts exist. Right? So there shouldn't be anybody that says, oh, you're going to force them to try. Yes, we're going to force them to entertain because that's why they're there to entertain the fans. The NBA is about the fans, not the players. So if that code of conduct is something that's part of their NBA contract, then how many players do you think are going to want to violate it in order to, receive some hefty fine or even a suspension from their team? And that's also the way it would be, like I stated, in the rookie-sophomore game. And then there's going to be these people that listen and they're like, well, what if the player gets hurt? Listen, again, they're entertaining, just like they do when they're playing, their regular games during the regular season or they're playing in the playoffs. It's entertainment for the fans. So if a player does get hurt, listen, it's in their contract. They signed on to be an NBA player, right? So there's that. So, that's the way that I would handle All-Star Weekend. I think you get the nostalgia in play there on Legends Night, and a lot of the younger kids would want to see some of the legends play at, their current age. And I think it would be a huge hit on social media, whether it be horse or the 3-point contest or the Legends game. And then Saturday, you got the return of the dunk contest with players voted in by the fans. So you have the best dunkers actually represented in the dunk contest. And there's, $500K that the winner gets. So that's at stake, which could amplify effort in the dunk contest. And then the $250K to the charity of their choice. But yeah, I think that it would force the players that people want to see into the dunk contest, right? And no props. And then Sunday, we get our return to the All-Star game, and the players, they have to compete, right? Otherwise they could be suspended or fined. So that's how I would do it. And I do think that the fans would like this setup a lot better.
I think it's going to have to come down to that. And it's a shame. It's a shame that pride, that competitive fire isn't there. We've been saying that for years, obviously, but it's never been more apparent than it is now. And it goes back to a tweet or an X post or whatever we're calling them these days that you shared in our Discord that says this is a case of cultural rot, that this is embedded in the culture of the modern NBA player, that you don't have that effort, that you don't have that competitiveness in the All-Star game. So you really need to change the culture, which is easier said than done, obviously. So it might come down to having to penalise players for not trying. And that's a shame. That's a real indictment of the current generation, I have to say. Hard to say that without sounding like a grumpy old man, Derek, but facts are facts. Look how uncompetitive the game has been for years. Look how terrible it's been for years. Look how it's been called out time and time again. And just all that pushback. Oh, it's an exhibition. It's just for fun. Who cares? It's just for the fans. Well, if it's for the fans, make it worth watching. And it certainly hasn't been. So, yeah, I'm all on board with your solutions because we have had that cultural rot. I think that was an astute way of putting it. I'm blanking on who said it, but you did post that in our Discord. So yeah, you're going to have to change the culture there, and penalising players for not trying seems like the right way to go. Also, absolutely go back to the East versus West format. If they wanted to do USA versus the world, that could potentially work as well. That's worked in the rookie-sophomore game, the Rising Stars Challenge as it has become. Whatever format you go with there, it has to be a proper game, a traditional game, proper rules. No more of these tournaments. No more half an hour of basketball in a 3-hour broadcast. That's the big thing, Derek. If it is just basically some ads broken up by basketball, that is a shame. That was disgraceful that happened. This is all happening under Adam Silver's watch. He's made so many changes. He's, I think, really damaged the culture of the NBA. He was handed a tight ship. It's just running it into a reef, quite frankly. So yeah, something needs to change, and I'm completely on board with your suggestions.
So another thing that I forgot to bring up, 80-20 rule. 80% basketball, 20% ads. You got to make the sponsors happy, right? Like you still have, you still have to, promote the sponsors and whatnot, and you still have to have your commercials and et cetera. But my All-Star weekend would be following a strict 80% basketball, 20% ads rule, at minimum, in order to have what happened this year not happen again. Also, another thought related to a possible event, and maybe this is something that could take place on Sunday before the All-Star game. And maybe it's something that can take place using the voting system again. The fans vote on what teams they want to see out there. But a 3-on-3 tournament where, let's say, Golden State gets voted in, they have to choose 3 players that are not participating in the All-Star game to represent their team in this 3-on-3 tournament, right? So half court, maybe games are to 21 and whatnot. So let's say it's Golden State versus Boston, and they choose 3 players from their squads to play in this 3-on-3 tournament, and maybe there's 8 teams, and something like that. But I think that maybe there's something that you can add before the All-Star game that would be really fun to watch for the fans. And it would be cool to see, like, let's say the Celtics are out there and Peyton Pritchard is out there on the floor cooking guys, right? In that half court setting. And, you see high effort and you see true competition, and maybe the winner can take home something nice and whatnot. But yeah, I thought a team 3-on-3 would also be kind of neat to fit somewhere in the All-Star festivities. But yeah, it really is sad that it's come to this, where these players who are making countless millions to play a child's game in order to entertain the fans don't have enough pride to participate in these events or try in these events.
Take them seriously,
and or take them seriously at all. And it's really a middle finger to the fans who line their wallets. Right. People talk like, oh, well, they're paid by their team. No, the teams are paid by the fans. Right. And if the fans aren't watching, if the fans aren't paying for merchandise, if nobody's watching, Andrew, the fans don't exist, these players don't have jobs in the NBA.
Yeah.
Right?
TV deals, no TV deals.
No TV deals, et cetera, no shoe deals, all of that stuff. So, I just think it's a big middle finger to the fans, the way it's handled now. And, you watch some, early 90s All-Star games and some 80s ones, and they really entertained. Andrew.
Absolutely.
They came to play, and they knew the importance of playing with pride, and they had pride in general, right? They wanted to be competitive. They wanted to outdo their peers. They still had that passion for, being the best, even if it was just an exhibition game, right? Et cetera. So, I think it's super sad what has happened to the state of basketball, and the same with football, right? They've turned the NFL Pro Bowl into two-hand touch. How ridiculous is that, right? So, what do you have for ideas for fixing NBA All-Star Weekend?
Well, first of all, as far as the ratio of ads to basketball, I absolutely agree with that. You obviously do need to please the sponsors. The sponsors are important to fund the NBA, obviously. And it kind of reminds me of when you're watching a 15 to 20 second video on YouTube, some little short video, and you get a 15-second ad or a 1-minute ad before this video that's under a minute itself. Just absolutely ridiculous these days. And obviously that speaks to advertising culture, the approach to advertising nowadays. I'd also like to throw this out there for your 3-on-3 games. Have Tim Kitzrow, the legendary voice of NBA Jam, be the hype man or the commentator for that.
That'd be funny. Yeah. I mean, he would obviously be in. Right, he would be so into that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could definitely do something like that as long as it doesn't hurt, the players taking it seriously, right? Because again, people want to watch competition. Even the young crowd. If you're a sport fan, you want to watch sports, and sports is about competition. If you're watching the slam dunk contest, you want to watch a contest. Right? If you're watching an all-star game, you want to watch a game. A game isn't a game with no effort, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, like, I think the thing is that, I'll say again, if you put a code of conduct violation as it relates to effort into these players' NBA contracts, then what player is going to want to get suspended for this? Yeah. What player is going – it's really sad because it's like we have to force these millionaires to try, right?
These pro athletes
we have to force these millionaires to entertain the fans that line their wallets. Like, it's mind-blowing to me. But it would force their hand at trying because they're not going to want to get fined and they're not going to want to get suspended.
And I think it has to come down to that, like I said, because – it is that cultural rot. Again, I love that phrase, why I keep bringing it up. It is about changing the culture, bringing back that competitive fire. If you have to force it, if you have to sit them down and say, hey, you need to try. You actually need to compete in this game. Look at the tradition of this All-Star game, the greats of the game. They put on a show every year. This is what added to their legend, their legacy, competing in the All-Star game year after year, putting on a show, participating in the Ultimate Pickup game alongside other current stars and eventual all-time greats as well. This is what you need to be striving for, not just making it a joke. So yeah, you need to change the culture, and that probably does come down to forcing it, unfortunately, with rules like that. I don't want to see them changing up the format in ridiculous ways or drastic ways. We've seen too much of that under Adam Silver. Big changes that haven't improved things without actually addressing the underlying issue. I think that the formats they had for years did work. Obviously, some games are going to be better than others, closer than others. That was always the case back in the day as well. Some dunk contests are going to be better than others. That was always the case too. Unless you were going to choreograph the event, like it's professional wrestling, sometimes it's not going to work out as well as others, but you're still going to have that consistent quality. That's what you should be striving for. I don't want to have ridiculously gimmicky formats. I think the traditional formats do work well. It's just that lack of effort. So I wouldn't actually bring anything drastically new as far as formats. I would stick with the traditional formats, as I think you would as well, and just, as you said, force players to compete. If it comes down to putting a clause in their contract, if it comes down to fining them or suspending them for not taking the weekend seriously, then that's what they're going to have to do.
So I want to bring up a couple comments from current NBA players about All-Star Weekend that I disagree with, and then we'll get into the community's responses. But before I actually do that, did you know that it was reported that the All-Star game lasted 3 hours and 30 minutes? And when I say the All-Star game, just the broadcast of it. The actual basketball that was played was 30 minutes and 27 seconds.
Putrid.
So almost 3 hours of BS and only 30 minutes of basketball. How pathetic is that? So yeah, 80-20 rule in my All-Star festivities, minimum. So here are a couple comments from players about All-Star Weekend. Kevin Durant says, I think it's more fun to complain about the NBA than to actually watch it. Crazy. Cancel All-Star Weekend and let's just give everybody a break since we're so miserable around this time. What a cop-out. What
Kevin
BS
Durant complaining
from
about
Kevin
people
Durant.
complaining?
A man who is set for life because of the fans, because he plays in a league where the fans line his pockets. Nobody said he didn't work hard. His skill is undeniable. He is a legend. He is a Hall of Famer and whatnot. But to on the fans like that, and to basically just call them complainers, even though there's absolutely legitimate gripes in a big way about how the players handle themselves, how Adam Silver's handling the festivities, all of that stuff, the entitlement, all of that stuff. What a slap in the face to the fans. And here's the other comment, and then I'm going to throw it over to you. Jokic says, I think maybe we should focus on some other things than All-Star. I think it's always going to be like this, so we should just accept it. So he's basically saying accept a crappy product, fans, right? How ridiculous is this? How ridiculous are these players? It's so insulting. The fans are – listen, when you look at social media during All-Star Weekend over the last few years, 99.9% of the posts are this is garbage. This is a waste. This wasted my night. Why am I watching this crap again? Why did I expect anything different? Why can't these guys try? Why is it the bottom of the league in the dunk contest? Why does nobody want to compete? And fans are upset about this. They feel like they deserve better. But Jokic says, I think it's always going to be like this, so we should just accept it. That is another, just like the Durant comment, what an absolute slap in the face. He should be ashamed of himself. And I usually don't disagree with Jokic, right? Yeah. He seems like a super likable guy most of the time. But that is complete BS by both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess anybody is prone to having a bad take at some point, and that certainly is Jokic's bad take right there. Durant amuses me because he is somebody who will openly complain. In fact, if you go back to before the All-Star Weekend, when they announced the format change, he was complaining about it. He was saying that the format is not a good idea. He was literally saying, this is a problem for All-Star Weekend. He was complaining, just as we are. So to turn around and say, oh, the fans shouldn't complain, just cancel the weekend or shut up and like it or whatever, that's absolutely ridiculous, absolutely entitled, especially when he can see the problem. He identified the problem. He complained himself. And of course, he has all those burners and everything, as we well know. That's pretty well documented. So Durant saying that, I mean, Durant, I think, showed his true character many years ago when he bolted to the Golden State Warriors as he did after they came back and beat him after being 3-1 down. So it doesn't surprise me that Durant is speaking to the fans and of the fans like that. But yeah, very disappointing, obviously. Couldn't disagree more with both of them. And it's just kind of funny that he's complaining about people complaining when he is himself quite a complainer.
Yeah, super embarrassing stuff. He is way out of line, as was Jokic.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, NBA-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at NBA-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So let's get to the community responses, Andrew. We did receive quite a few. Obviously, a lot of thoughts out there recently about, how we can fix this, a lot of disappointed fans, etc. So what I asked the community was, if you were in charge, how would you fix NBA All-Star Weekend? And I said things to think about. How would you get the players to want to compete? How would you reshape events? Any new events? So here are the responses on Twitter. Rock at Jeff Cortinas states, the fans stop showing up and stop watching it. It's genuinely the only way for them to understand. He's not wrong, right? Like, what if the players, packed into an arena and there were no fans, right? What if people stopped streaming it? What if people stopped watching on TV altogether? What if they stopped buying the shoes? What if they stopped buying the merchandise, the jerseys, all of that stuff? It's a pipe dream. It would never happen, right? We know that. And people love basketball, and there's always going to be, some people in the stadium and buying the merchandise and whatnot. But he's not wrong, because again, without fans, the product doesn't exist.
For sure. And I think it's similar to some of our complaints with video games, that ultimately you need to vote with your wallet, vote with your eyeballs.
The Cyber Athlete Gaming states, at this point, they should just go full on MTV rock and jock b-ball jam mode. If the players won't give a care, then turn it into pure pop culture spectacle, complete with a 25-point basket. I don't like that idea. I mean, the NBA is turning into some sort of weird, cheesy reality show sponsored by Disney, etc. But I'm not ready for the NBA to turn into some type of Jersey Shore BS or rock and jock BS, etc. I see where he's going with it, because he's basically stating, the players don't want to try. So let's try to make it entertaining in some other way and not even use the NBA players anymore. But yeah, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I don't want to see that either, but I get the sentiment. It's basically saying it's ruined, and can we even fix it? And I understand that cynicism, that skepticism that anything can be done. So in that sense, yeah, I wouldn't want to see it. But yeah, I understand people shrugging their shoulders and saying, hey, you might as well make it ridiculous because it already is.
Chaz at Chaz Thomas states, I think there isn't a scenario where guys would play hard like previous generations, and they don't need the All-Star game to build their global profiles because they are already global stars. Again, why are fans missing the point on this? They wouldn't be global stars without the fans, right? Like they wouldn't have these brands without the fans and whatnot. So like they have an obligation to entertain the fans. And whether that's during regular games, playoffs, all-star festivities, etc., they should be entertaining. And I will say though that he makes a point about why it is this way. They already have the money, they already have the sponsors, they already have, their own shoes. They already have people buying their jerseys, etc. But still, the point is that the effort should be a thank you, right? to the fans for making this happen. They shouldn't be able to just, disrespect the fans in this way. And I think you would agree.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And not to overuse the phrase, but cultural rot, generational divide, however you want to put it, is definitely an issue here. And a few people have said this, but it's really an indictment of the whole approach to the All-Star game when you have players playing harder in pickup games in the summer, in the Drew League and so forth, than they are in front of millions of fans. Dwindling audience, obviously, when you look at the ratings of this year's game, but they'll play harder in front of a smaller audience in a kind of an incognito scenario in the Drew League or other summer pickup games, and then not give any effort or very minimal effort in front of millions in the All-Star game. It's really sad.
Well, I also think it's funny, the whole thing of, well, they make so much money now, they don't want to, get hurt and hurt their brand, etc. So what you're saying is these players who, tried their hearts out in the 80s and in the early 90s and approached these festivities with pride and all of that stuff, are you saying that because they were making less money, that it made them try in games where they could get hurt and then they would have nothing? Like, do you see how stupid that is? Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, they were trying back then because of pride. They were trying back then because they were competitors, because they wanted to best each other. They wanted to put on a show on the world stage and whatnot. They didn't make as much as today's players. So that's why you think they tried in an exhibition. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I disagree with that point as well. If anything, let's say these players back then, let's say, let's bring up a player, let's say Tim Hardaway or whatever. So let's say Tim Hardaway had a contract for $1 or $2 million. And let's say he gets injured in the All-Star game and then, his career is altered and then he can't make any more money in his career. How is that not going to affect him more than the current players who have tens and 20s and 30s of millions of dollars, right? So why would Tim Hardaway put himself on the line in an All-Star game back then, and then the players can't today? Like, it just doesn't make that rationale still makes no sense to me. They had more to lose back then by getting hurt in these exhibition games, right? In the All-Star festivities and whatnot. They had more to lose than today's players.
I would think with today's players supposedly being so evolved, Derek, we hear that word a lot, that they could play an extra game every year.
Yeah. They're clearly not more evolved because they can't play back-to-backs oftentimes. They're constantly resting. They're out for, I hurt my finger or I stubbed my toe. So give me a break. State of the franchise sports and betting at State Franchise states go back to East-West format. Then he states significantly increase the amount of money for the winning team. You shouldn't be in the dunk contest if you can't get 10 minutes per game. Sorry, McClung. Otherwise, it can now go away. I didn't watch the skills competition. If you notice, the skills competition was out, like in my All-Star festivities. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think many people enjoy it.
It's been ruined.
Yeah, I mean, I think even two ball was more entertaining than the skills competition.
Kamala chucking up threes was even more entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I agree with some of this. He states significantly increase the amount of money for the winning team. I don't even think you have to do that if you have that clause in these players' contracts, right? It shouldn't be about money for the All-Star festivities. It should be about the fans. So, but yeah, he made some good points.
And like you said, bring in the whole players' prize money goes to a charity of their choice.
Exactly. We got food at the house out now. 432 Hertz states each player in their own team jersey. Yeah, I'd love to see that, right? Bring that back from the early 2000s. That looked awesome. Payout for the winning team only, and MVP gets the payout times 2, regardless of if the player is on the winning team or not. I don't know if I like that because that encourages ball hogging. Right? I think that encourages a selfish mindset. I'm not sure I agree with the MVP really getting anything payout-wise that's different from the regular team because I think it can hurt the integrity of the game. But I think those are some interesting choices.
I'm kind of torn when it comes to wearing the original team jerseys. I thought that was a fantastic look. I really liked the idea. I like how it also allowed players to keep their own number. But I also like the idea of having those traditional All-Star jerseys that they had for so many years in the 80s and 90s. I like the idea of players having to have seniority to keep their number. You look back at the East All-Stars in the 80s and 90s, especially the early 90s, you'd have Larry Bird with 33. Patrick Ewing had to take number 3. Scottie Pippen had to take number 30. Whoever had seniority got to keep their number. Maybe that's an incentive. The longer you're here, the more years that you're an All-Star, you can finally keep your number that's special to you in the All-Star game. Just a thought, but I kind of like it both ways, so I don't really have a strong preference, I suppose. But no, I really did like that look, so I can't deny that.
I can go either way. I just absolutely love seeing the players in their, their aways in their homes and whatnot. I just think it's a super cool look. So moving over to Discord, QB1120 states, I think it's a bit overblown. To me, there was never anything to fix. You can't tell guys playoffs and championships are the goal. The most important thing, and then have them care about a meaningless exhibition game that replaces your vacation or break that you sorely needed. The vacation and the break they get with their millions of dollars are because of the fans, QB 1120. It's not a meaningless exhibition game. To them. And when you say that there was never anything to fix, there's obviously a need to fix something because the uproar, it's like 99% negative about the festivities. Fans are disappointed. A lot of fans are actually pissed off about what's happened. They are not happy with the way the players handle it. They're not happy with the way the league handles it. They're not happy with the amount of ads as opposed to real events in basketball and whatnot. So there is plenty to fix. So I 100% disagree with you there. He states, as for the game itself, he says, go back to East versus West. And some years it'll be good, some years not. They might have enough guys to do US versus the world at some point, which would breathe life into the game. I completely disagree, unless, again, there's code of conduct violations for low effort in contracts. He then states, Saturday night is what I like, though. I watch Saturday, but not Sunday. I think they could use some new events, though, especially with the dunk contest in its current state.
Yeah, I mean, I also have to respectfully disagree that there's nothing to fix. I think that the culture, once again, the attitude towards the game has definitely changed. It was never a problem back in the day for it to be competitive, that it was yet another event on the schedule that players seemingly enjoyed competing in back in the day. So it's a change in attitude towards the game itself. It seemed NBA players have had multiple goals. Obviously, yes, the ultimate goal is to make the playoffs and win a championship, but also individually to make the All-Star game, to put on that jersey, to be immortalized as an All-Star participant, and hopefully be a perennial All-Star, because those are the best players in NBA history, the ones that were being selected year after year and putting on that jersey year after year. So yeah, I do think there is something to fix there, but it's more of an attitude issue than format.
Moving on to the next response on Discord, Pep states, I think the All-Star game at this point is unfixable. I heard league thinking about 1v1 tournament for next year, and on paper it sounds cool, but this year's format also sounds cool until they started playing. What about Saturday? Bring back 2-ball or shooting stars, revamp skills challenge to original format, and raise prize money for winning, so maybe better players would like to participate. Again, sad the lengths that we would have to go through in order to apparently make this work. I don't think 2-ball coming back is going to revive the weekend. However, I do think that it showed better than some of the events we have going on now, if we're being completely honest. And 1v1 tournament would have to go, once again, through that whole code of conduct thing that I talked about in order to force people to try if they brought that event in, because otherwise I don't think you're going to get any high effort at all.
I will say the 1 year, I believe it was Philadelphia, 2002, they had the 3v3 tournament with the celebrity, the legend, and a current player, and Moses Malone was playing in that. And they brought it back in 2003 as well, I believe, and that was when Dominic Wilkins threw down that alley-oop, and we were kind of all excited about that because he'd been out of the league for a few years, of course, and retired. So those events can be fun, but not quite enough to save the whole weekend. I'm all for them coming back, but my hopes for them saving the weekend kind of low.
ZCB44 says, All-Star Game becomes USA versus International. Dunk contest has to have at least a couple participants with some star power. Make skills competition solo again. Bring back shooting stars with recently retired NBA and WNBA vets. And three-point contest is fine as is. So he wants to bring in some of the past players, WNBA and NBA, and that's why I have a Legends Night. I think that's a really good idea. And then bringing in the star power, like I stated, I think that, putting it in their contract that, they have to try, number one, and number two, have the fans vote who enters the dunk contest. And if the fans vote you in, you have to compete.
I mean, it is the All-Star weekend. You do need that star power. And yes, the three-point shootout and dunk contest, they've not necessarily been the top players, although, of course, many all-time greats have competed in those events and won them. There have also been other players, role players who are specialists, spectacular dunkers, whatever, have won as well. So it shouldn't just be about the stars, but the star power is so important.
Maz states, I think it's a problem with the players. They just don't care, and it doesn't matter what format they change it to. If the players don't care, it won't be entertaining. Yeah, so my format is to try to get the players to care, to force them to care, to force them to put forward effort. But she's right. It's part of that cultural rot. It's part of that mindset. And, it's really sad, but you're going to have to force the players to compete.
Yeah, and it's kind of wild that we're thinking of having to put incentives, possible punishments in place for not competing, not trying hard. But, yeah, that's what it's come to.
Careless XEI states, I would change the order of the events on Saturday. Slam dunk contest would be the very first one. Disputed in, and I believe he means organized in a horse format, maybe pig, since it is quicker, with no props allowed. If it works, great. If not, it would be the least important event anyway. Next, we would have either the OG Skills Challenge or Shooting Stars. I think both are really cool events when done properly. And lastly, the three-point contest, which pretty much has become the main event of the evening. They could even include some WNBA players such as Clark and Ionescu to compete with the NBA players. That would be fun to watch. Perhaps even some retired NBA legends. And then he states, as for the All-Star Game, I got nothing. It is what it is. I don't see how USA versus World would make it any better, and I completely agree with you. Maybe that would evoke some sense of pride in the American players, but it's not the same when you're just grouped with random guys under the, quote, rest of the world banner. Just do West versus East and hope for the best. Maybe shorten it to 10-minute quarters and have players wear their own team jersey. As he states for the horse or pig format in the dunk contest, so basically almost like a copycat thing. I think that would be actually fun to watch if the players were actually trying their hardest, right? And trying to be super creative with their dunks. I also think that it could get pretty ugly if you did that, but it would be cool to see, I don't know, Anthony Edwards go up and do a windmill and the person behind him have to go up and try to do the exact same windmill, right? And then fail at it miserably. I think that would be fun on social media. That's an interesting idea.
It is, and I suppose it does limit the possibility of creativity if somebody comes in with this really unique idea. Of course, a lot of the unique ideas in recent years have come down to jumping over people or using props in some way, so what are we going to lose? But an interesting idea. The problem, of course, is if you have somebody who can, say, jump from the free throw line, or someone who is taller can jump a bit higher, can pull up a dunk that nobody else in the contest can, they're kind of going to win by default. So maybe you change up the order every round or something. You have to make it work so that it's fair. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea. It's something they haven't done. They have changed up the format with the wheel and routines as opposed to individual dunks and scoring the routine. So the dunk contest is not so sacred that you can't change up the format, less so than the All-Star Game, for example. The traditionalist in me says, it has to be the main event because it is the main event, the most spectacular way to finish the weekend. But because it is so subjective, so controversial, more of a letdown sometimes in the three-point shootout where you do have that objective winner. You either make the shots or you don't. You either win the contest fair and square or you don't. There's not a matter of a subjective score. So while the traditionalist in me, Derek, was to say, keep the dunk contest as the main event, it is the spectacular main event, I see the logic.
Well, two things. One, he was talking for the pig horse format type thing. You could do it by position. So let's say you have 6 players compete and it's 2 centers, 2 wings, and 2 point guards or something like that, right? And that's how you do it. So, I mean, technically you could make that work and make it so it's done, by position and whatnot. That way, at least the dunks could be attainable by the players in that copycat format. I also want to bring something up as it relates to the celebrity game. You notice that I didn't mention that in my restructured festivities. I think that there's room for the celebrity piece. And I don't know if you have that earlier in the week or you have it, maybe on the first night, maybe you put that on a Thursday or something like that, and you make it bigger. So it's not just the celebrity game. You have like a celebrity 3-point contest too, right? And maybe celebrity horse or something like that. If you want to get the celebrities involved, maybe just give them their own night of events and see how the fans take to it. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't bring up the celebrity game in my festivities.
I mean, mainstream crossover is important for ratings and for pop culture relevance. So getting celebrities in there in some form, it makes sense.
So, Andrew, I believe that we received more responses on other social media platforms.
Yeah, so jumping over to Facebook, a few people have kind of had the thought that it's done, that there is no saving the All-Star Weekend, which I think is still a valid response to this question, Derek, that some people feel that it has run its course, that there is no fixing it with the cultural rot, to use that phrase again. Dave, for example, says, just cancel the whole weekend event, it's a mess. And in a similar vein, Edward says, don't even bother, just call it, announce the All-Stars and let them get their shine on media, but enough of the event, no All-Star Weekend, that time has passed.
I don't know, I think that if you're giving up on All-Star Weekend, basically festivities that are for the fans, like this is supposed to be a weekend for the fans, I think you're giving up on the fans and the players by saying just throw it away. I think that utilized properly like it was in the past, I think that All-Star Weekend can be an amazing attraction. I think that it can be a well-deserved break for a lot of the players and teams and whatnot, while giving the fans what they deserve, a show, and, as a player being able to market yourself. And I think that that's also being lost in this, is I think that the All-Star Weekend, the festivities, used to be considered legendary, right? When you did something great, like Larry Bird hitting that last 3 in the 3-point contest and putting his finger up, right? And, before that 3-point contest, walking into the locker room and saying, who's going to finish second and whatnot. And then how many times do we see the Jordan free throw line dunk, right? And Larry Nance's amazing dunk contest highlights. And, when baby Jordan, Harold Miner, won it, and, watching him do the back slam and just those powerful dunks that he did. And, Vince Carter's dunk contest, which is so legendary. So it used to be a platform for these stars, right, to basically even build their brand more, right, and to have something that they can hang their hat on historically. And I don't know how that got lost at some point. I don't know why the players don't look at it that way, but it's ridiculous to me. So I think that I don't think you should throw it away. I think that there are ways that you can keep it intact. I think there's ways that you can make the players care a little bit more, whether you force their hand on it or not. And I think the fans deserve a great weekend.
Oh, I agree. I think you need to give it a go, fixing the All-Star Weekend, because the issue isn't just about the All-Star Weekend, it's about that lack of competitiveness and dedication to competition throughout the year. So I think it kind of starts with the All-Star Weekend in a way, but at the same time I also get where they're coming from, feeling so disenfranchised, feeling that the event has fallen so far into ruin that it can't be salvaged. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I also see where they're coming from. And to the point of it being cultural, Jacqueline, aka Lady Culture, says an All-Star Weekend can only be as good as the All-Stars involved. The format and events worked for over 20 years until suddenly they didn't. I wonder why. This is a league and player problem, not a format issue. As much as they would love to frame it as that, the league is trending sharply downward. And that's basically what we've been saying, Derek, that this is a cultural problem, that these formats worked for so many years until they didn't. It's not like these formats are bad ideas or they can't work today, that they're incompatible with modern basketball or something like that. So it really is a culture issue, and as long as the players feel that way, as long as they don't care, yeah, that is a problem.
I agree, but I also want to point out that the changes that they've made to the format over the years and consistently making bad changes and poor decisions in relation to that, I also think that has hurt.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they are trying all of these new things. Most of the time, they're bad ideas. They've now made it so basketball, it's like a 20-80 thing where it's 20% basketball and 80% ads, right? That's a format thing, right? So, like, I think it's a combination of, we keep saying it, cultural rot. I think it's a combination of that, the players' mindsets, management's mindsets, the Adam Silver, etc. And then at the same time, I think that the format changes have been more often than not piss poor. And certain things don't need changing, or if they do, it's only slight tweaking. But they've been really aggressive with these changes, and I think that they've been pretty bad.
Agreed, and yeah, it definitely doesn't help. Andrea says, is it so difficult to make USA versus the rest of the world a thing, obviously? And a few people have suggested that, and it is an idea that's always floated. We have seen it in the Rising Stars Challenge, obviously. And I see the argument for it. It's another format change. Maybe it does light a fire under the players. But at the same time, rest of the world, I mean, it's not going to be like the Olympics where you have full squads of people from the same country competing for national pride. It's kind of a mixture of nations versus the US under that format. I'm not sure the pride is going to be there on the world side, so to speak, or the unity, I suppose. And I also don't think it addresses the underlying problems. But no, people do seem to like the idea, so I get why they're suggesting it.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to fix the All-Star Weekend. I don't think that's going to get players to try, to be honest with you. I don't think that it's going to be as popular as a lot of these people suggesting it thinks that it would be. But I see why they continue to bring it up. You know what I was just thinking of before you get to the next response is I wonder if there could be something integrated into All-Star Weekend related to future NBA stars. So I think that would be tough because the college basketball season is going on right now, but something related to, top prospects, the top 20 prospects in college basketball or something like that. And they have an event tailored around that. I mean, people talking constantly about Cooper Flag, right? How often are we seeing posts about Cooper Flag? Constantly, right? So maybe seeing some sort of a college basketball future NBA type all-star game, like with all these top prospects playing, like I might be interested in watching that. Like I said, I think it would be tough with them playing during the college basketball season, but I think that would be cool.
Would you mix the teams and have pros and amateurs together, or would you have them NBA versus college? Because it could end up being very one-sided.
I would say amateurs. That's no NBA players. It's like the top 20, like the top 20 college.
Oh, they're an event. Sorry, yeah, I misunderstood. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be something that could promote those players' brands. Something scouts would like to see. I think the fans would love to see it. Etc. And Cooper Flag got sunned by this player, and I didn't even know this player existed, and now I'm watching them in this all-star format and whatnot, and boy, this player is good. I hope my team gets him. I think that would be interesting.
It's kind of like all-stars, rising stars, and future stars all in the one weekend.
Exactly.
Jared says, if you wanted to try and salvage the event, take a page out of the NHL's book and go similar to the Four Nations Face-Off. Maybe have a USA team versus Canada versus Europe versus rest of the world. Make it a true event where people take pride in what they're doing. I don't think the event can be saved, but that's probably the best chance you have. So that's similar to the USA versus the rest of the world idea, obviously. And, I mean, it's interesting. I'm not going to say that it couldn't work, but I do think you run into some of those same problems where you don't necessarily have a united front for rest of the world kind of thing. Or even with Europe, obviously. A lot of countries in Europe, and they all have their own sports rivalries and so forth. But I appreciate the creativity, the suggestion, and looking at the success of the NHL's event. No, I see the logic in throwing out the suggestion, but I still favor East versus West.
I agree. Maybe they can borrow the fighting aspect from the NHL and allow the players to beat the crap out of each other. How about, Jimmy Butler gets into a fight with
everyone,
another player, and maybe he craps himself again, and maybe that goes viral on social media. But yeah, maybe let's allow him to fight. How about that? Maybe that would be interesting. That would blow up on social media.
Oh yeah. So the other thing that people are suggesting, Derek, is changing the stakes. And Ren says, make it East versus West again. Whoever wins, then the next game on their schedule won't be played. It'll be an automatic win. For example, if the West wins, then the teams of the players included in the All-Star team won't have to play the next game. Gives a couple of examples of how that could work. Specific players being selected, get that automatic win for the next game on the schedule. Says problems that would arise as the money and TV ratings, but I think Adam Silver can work it out to bring back the viewers to the All-Star game and for players to play hard. This would also make players try hard in the regular season so that they can be an All-Star. Look, I appreciate the creativity of the idea, but at the end of the day, I can't get on board with handing a win to the All-Stars for the regular season. It is an exhibition at the end of the day. It's an important one, traditionally speaking, but I do think those results should be separate from regular season.
I agree completely, 100%. I also want to point out that I don't think one win is going to make them try harder. Like there's already low effort a good portion of the time in the regular season by a lot of these teams, whether it be top teams or bottom teams, etc. The regular season isn't what it used to be. I don't think that's going to get players to play harder.
Martin is also in favour of bringing back East versus West. Whichever wins the All-Star game gets home court advantage in the finals. That's an idea that's been put out there a few times. Sweeten the pot for the slam dunk contest and three-point shootout so superstars take part in it. Not sure what the rewards would be, but there should be some. Maybe add an eras game separate from the actual All-Star game where the rules are different and the game is officiated differently each quarter. Schedule the NBA Cup so it happens around the time leading up to the All-Star game and have the NBA Cup final be on All-Star weekend. And if they were to get rid of the All-Star weekend, Derek, or phase it out, or just name All-Stars and not have an All-Star game, maybe the NBA Cup could be more of a replacement for the All-Star weekend. I'm not really in favour of that, but that is another solution to throw out there. And home court advantage in the finals, it's a nice idea, but here's the thing.
The team has to earn it. Like the team, you have to. That is a big deal, right? Like the team,
it is
in totality has to earn it, and you shouldn't be able to earn home court advantage playing with a bunch of different other players from your conference that aren't on your team. I've never agreed with that. I never thought that was a good idea, so I'm completely against that.
I think it would be very hard to get players who aren't going to be near the NBA Finals to be invested in that. Why are we going to? Why are we going to give our opponents and possible playoff opponents, a chance to win the championship, a better chance to win the championship? So it'd be very hard because that can only go to one team, basically. And although it's very unlikely, Derek, if the East All-Stars won and then secured home court advantage for the Eastern Conference champion, and then none of the All-Stars actually got through to the finals, none of their teams got through to the finals. That's very unlikely because usually if you have an All-Star representation, you are one of the top teams in the league, but that'd be crazy. So that's another drawback there. I just don't think you can get players incentivized by something that they might not even benefit from.
Yeah, the whole thing doesn't make sense to me, so I definitely wouldn't entertain that.
And finally, Roger Ward, one of the NBA Live 2001 legends, of course, along with Nate, says, G League All-Stars versus Rookie Sophomores game. Actual All-Star players will never give an F about these games anymore. Focus on improving the dunk contest and three-point shooting contest. So yeah, I mean, I do think you need the star power for All-Star Weekend to actually mean something. Again, All-Star Weekend. But with the veterans not caring as much, I also do see the argument for making it about the rising stars.
Yeah, I think that I would rather not have the G League included because it should be, you make it to the NBA level as in you're a professional basketball player and that's your reward. I think my idea a little bit earlier as far as the college players is a little bit different because those players are still in school. The G League is an extension of the NBA in the way that it's a developmental project. Like these players are developmental projects and whatnot. And I don't think that those developmental projects should be taking part in the All-Star festivities unless they're NBA players. And that kind of goes against what I said about Mac McClung earlier, but it wasn't the fact that Mac McClung was from the G League that bothered me. Technically, it was more the fact that he wasn't doing real dunks, right? But yeah, you could say that too. You could say Mac McClung is a G League player. He's not on an NBA roster. He's not playing in regular season NBA games. Let's not allow him to compete. And I could stand behind that, to be completely honest with you, as well. So that's just my opinion on it. I think being in the NBA All-Star festivities should be, a privilege. You're in the NBA, right? And I think that it should be something that you strive for. And then if you're just going to throw G League players in the NBA All-Star weekend and allow them to partly take center stage, it takes away from the lore of it. And that's just how I feel.
Oh, I see that. And I think there is room to celebrate the rising stars and possibly involve the G League in some way, maybe on the Friday night or maybe as part of some of the Saturday night's festivities, not so much the All-Star game itself. But yeah, we really do need the top stars to make All-Star weekend mean something. But I do like that people are being creative here, that they're thinking outside the box. I do think it shows that people care, that the All-Star weekend still does mean something to people. I know some people are clearly sick of it or sick of what it's become and feel it should be done away with. I understand the sentiment, even if I don't entirely agree with it. And even if I don't entirely agree with these suggestions, Derek, I do love the creativity. I love that people care about the event and that they're trying to come up with some creative ideas, because clearly a lot of the stuff they've been trying simply hasn't been working.
I also think it's important to note that the majority of our responses were people basically stating that there's a major issue, right? And you see that on social media during and after these events take place. Is the overwhelming reception to All-Star Weekend is it sucks, right? That people are not enjoying watching it. They want to see the stars compete in all the events. They want to see more effort. They want to see format changes. They think Adam Silver has really screwed things up. They think that there's cultural rot, like we had talked about, that these players just don't care and whatnot. So you can see we received a ton of responses to this mailbag question. It could have been people saying, oh, I enjoyed it, right? Or they could have been saying, I don't really think there's anything to fix. But the large majority of those responses agree that there's definitely a major issue.
Agreed. I think that much is obvious, certainly, but I am biased to my own preferences, naturally. But yeah, hearing so many like-minded reactions to the weekend, widespread disappointment, disdain for what the event has become the whole weekend, yeah, I certainly don't feel alone in my opinions about the All-Star weekend. It's not just us shaking our fists, yelling at clouds, Derek. A lot of people do see the problems with the weekend and want it to be fixed, want it to be better. Some people are over it, but a lot of people, again, thinking outside the box or just wanting to see those traditional formats come back. But most of all, the competitiveness of the game and to have that competitive culture and that pride in the All-Star weekend. And yeah, that's what it comes down to. But thank you to everybody who responded to Derek's prompt this week. We enjoyed reading your responses. Glad that you're as passionate about the topic as we are. And please keep the conversation going. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, thank you for tuning in. And please join us again next week and every week on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts. In the meantime, make sure you're following us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us. And of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
You can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D for3G and at D for384. I'm also on the NLSC, D for3, and on YouTube, D for3.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum, and Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. The NLSC is on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep a look to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.